record on this. Hello and welcome. Mary Lou here from Orchestrate Coaching and Consulting. And today I have the gorgeous Amanda Kate with us, who is by trade a kinesiologist. That's what I knew about her when I first met her. However, holy guacamole, she is so much more than that. She is, how do I even explain it to you? A ball of goodness all wrapped into one with so much strength and groundiness. For me, Amanda, you are the explanation of the balance between the masculine and feminine in the way that you show up and the way that you support and in the way that you speak. And I am so grateful to know you. And I've invited Amanda today to talk to us about the heroine journey. And I've only become aware of this knowing her. So I've always known about not always, but I've learned always about the hero's journey and how that's used in movies, how that's used in stories, and how to use that to look at our own lives in the circle of the hero's journey of what we go through. But since talking to you and following your podcast and hearing you speak, it's like, wow, there's a heroine journey, and that's very different. And I went straight away, as those who listen to me and know the work that I do, it's like, oh, how can we apply this to our young people? Like, why wait until we're adults to learn this? Let's learn this when we're young, right? And so thank you so much for making the time today to come share about this, talk about this, and feel free to introduce yourself to everybody else, because I've just let everybody know how I see you.
I appreciate it, my love. Look, I've sort of, kinesiology was the doorway that I walked through, and it's led to so many more learning journeys and learning opportunities. And I'm one of those people that I will not bring things into my clinic or teach them to other people until I've truly embodied the wisdom. And I think that's where the heroine's journey stuff has really only started coming out of me the last few months, because the last 2 years I've been going through multiple heroine's journeys in pretty much every area of my life. So it has been a massive learning curve once again, but it has been life-changing, learning about it, understanding that's because you know what it's like. You go through the journey and then you get the wisdom of, oh, that's actually what I've been doing.
That's right. So just explain something to me. Is this something that you came up with on your own journey, or is this something that you were going through and then learned, oh yeah, exactly what you just said, like, oh my God, this is what I've just gone through, but it's already like that sort of theory about it out there? Because before you, I'd never heard it.
Yeah, do you know, I learned it, we talked about it and brushed on it in the archetypal work that I've done. So I've done a lot of archetypal life coaching, learning the 22 ancient priestess archetypes, which are different from the Jungian archetypes. So it's based on the 22 major arcana of the tarot, which we don't like to say because obviously the tarot gets put into that woo-woo, but all of our ancient history has come through the knowledge of these archetypes.
Yeah.
And that's actually how they managed to pass down the information, was through things like the tarot, playing cards, art, all of that, because they couldn't write it down.
They couldn't communicate it any other way.
Supposedly, yeah, burned in the Library of Alexandria.
Yeah.
And so I kind of knew about it, but I really didn't put two and two together until I was coming out the other side, as we often don't, because we're going through it and we're just trying to, make it through the tumultuousness that gets thrown at us when we are in these deep learning, healing, embodying wisdom kind of cycles. So there's two different versions of it. And Maureen Murdoch was one of Joseph Campbell's students. And she said, but what about the female version? And Joseph said something to her along the lines of, well, women don't need their own journey because they are kind of the thing that the hero is questing for. And she's like, let me have a look at this. Doesn't quite ring true. Because realistically, when you think about it, And again, we go, I always say this because of, the state of the world. It's not about gender-based stuff. Everything is that masculine and feminine balance. It is about having, with the yin yang, it's the light and the dark and the light. It all exists within each other, but it's how we're expressing it. And so if you think about the way the hero's journey starts, it's the call to adventure, which is a call outward. It's actually the world that is calling us to change almost, or, there is still the internal part of it, of course, but for the most part, it's this call out. We're going out, we're gaining wisdom out, we're gaining those mentors and teachers who are going to guide us to slay the external dragons and ogres.
Yeah.
The heroine's journey, and I kind of mix the two when I talk about it, because I think they do follow the similar arc. But what we really do, if you notice the way that we're brought up, we often disconnect from that feminine. So whether we have a great relationship with our mother or not, there's something that we see in them that we go, no, that's not what success looks like.
Oh, yes.
Because we're taught in a patriarchal society that, men are the primary and women are the secondary, and that anything other than that, 1% of controlling people that decide what society does are basically other than. So we look usually towards the more masculine presentation in our parenting and the more feminine, and go, that's more what success looks like when we're looking at the masculine. So we identify with that, and there's this little bit of towards the feminine, and we start to then live our life as though we're in that masculine world. So we're doing and we're getting the success and we're achieving what we're supposed to achieve, and we're really working hard to do that. And we get to this point of, obviously there's roads of trials in both journeys. We go through all of these trials, we feel like we're winning. We have to obviously do this for our character development. And so this is that kind of masculine feminine balance of, is my outsides matching my insides? And we kind of look and we're like, oh, we've got this success, but something's not sitting right. Like, we've done the things, we've ticked the boxes. For me, it was, I got good grades at school. I went to work for my dad for a bit. I went traveling, married the kind of man I should marry, had my 2 kids, lived in a beautiful house, had the international travel, all of these tick boxes that should have created this perfect life for me. And yet I was miserable, depressed, anxious, hated myself. Like, I could not walk past a mirror without wanting to smash that mirror. I hated myself. And this is that illusory boon of success. Well, hang on paper, my life is perfect. Regardless of what that perfection looks like for you, it's like, I've done all the things, but now what? Is this really all life is? And what it is we start to realize that in some way we've sacrificed our soul, we've estranged ourselves from the truth of who we are. We may not be living to our values. There's something going on, and sometimes we can't put a finger on it. How many people get to that midlife and go, I feel stuck, I just feel bleh, I don't feel like me anymore, I just don't know what's going on. And that feeling of lostness is because we've betrayed ourselves in some way to fit into this world that isn't actually made for us, that isn't part of what we're supposed to do. And the way we then go is, and it's told in multiple stories about goddesses and, ancient stories, the descent to meet the goddess, which is our stripping bare and going inside. And so there's a story of the goddess Inanna who goes to the underworld to get her sister, but at every one of the 7 layers of the underworld, she has to take something off. So, she loses her crown and her robe, and by the time she gets to the inner world, she is naked and vulnerable. And that's what we really have to do, because we're going inside ourselves and we're stripping ourselves bare. And we're slaying those inner dragons, ogres, demons. We're uncovering all those stories that we thought we should live to, that were supposed to make us happy, and we start to reconnect, well, actually, is this the life I want? Is this actually what I want to be doing? Does this align with my values? Does this align with what I see as who I want to be, how I want to be in this world? And we really start to ask some of those deep questions. And I think people are afraid of these questions because of the fact that, the feminine journey is non-linear, whereas the masculine journey is the linear. And people get afraid that once they open this box and they look at the grief or they look at the trauma and stories they're carrying, that it's like Pandora's box and it's just going to hail stuff everywhere and nobody's going to be able to put a lid back on it. But that is never the case. And I don't like to use absolutes, but in my experience, I have not seen one yet where that has been the case.
In a society that is very much against being able to be emotional,
Yeah,
and crying or anything that's labeled as a negative emotion, we really struggle as a society to deal with that. Like kids having tantrums in a supermarket, or a child, being hurt in a playground. This has happened with my own children, and being told, "Oh, you're such a strong boy for not crying," when half of his arm was like literally bleeding and skin hanging off.
yeah,
Like, are you serious? And no wonder my child comes and vomits at home for 2 hours, having a meltdown because the emotions are all sucked in,
yeah,
And when I'm hearing you talking, this applies to all genders. Like, it's to
yeah,
whether you're a male, female, non-binary, whatever,
yeah,
it applies to all. Like, because
yeah.
as you were speaking, I see men
Oh,
particularly
100%.
go through this even more so. And it's even harder for them to be able to unpack because of the connotations around that vulnerability. So for you, you work mostly with adults.
Yes.
Have you had like where, because as you're speaking, I'm like, no, 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 this is definitely, I apply this with a lot of kids already. Like I can
Oh,
see
yeah.
where I'm doing this, but not so much calling it the heroine's journey, but it's all about that coming inwards. Now, of course, a 12-year-old is not going to know what they want, is not going to, but they can set who they want to be and how they choose to show up, and talking to their emotions and taking responsibility for what they can control, right? And like,
Yeah.
so coming back to that inner self. And I don't care what anyone says, kids have got so much more wisdom,
Oh,
so much more inner wisdom, because they don't have those layers. What would be your advice, say, to a parent listening to us, on how they can start applying this in their family situation so they can start teaching it to their children as well?
yeah, look, I think it's about acknowledging that your perception is only one perception of what's going on.
Yeah.
And until we talk to somebody else, and I say this with my teenage girls in clinic as well, you look at somebody who you think are giving you, dirty looks and what have you, and you're like, oh, they hate me, and you start to internalize it. But what we've done is we've picked up everything we believe, our life experience, all the ways that we feel about ourselves. We've picked it up out of us. We've put it in the other person, and we've looked back towards ourselves
Love it.
with all of the stuff that we've got, and we look at ourselves through that lens. But you know what they're probably doing?
Same
Is
thing.
exactly the same thing. They're getting all of their stuff, putting it in us and going, oh my God, she hates me, or they hate me, or whatever. But it's because we're using our perception of ourselves to perceive other people's perception of us.
Yes.
And so you look at how messy it gets anyway, just in that normal human interaction.
Yeah.
The idea basically, as we, just to quickly round out the circle of the heroine's journey, is we go on that journey of the underworld and we start to go, okay, so this is, how I want to be in the world. These are the stories. I can see them as stories. I can acknowledge that this has happened. We start to then move into choice of how we build our foundations moving forward. And we do get to this point where we're kind of like, there were parts of that old me that I actually really liked, that, there's this yearning almost for our old way of being. And what we then do is we kind of want to reconnect to that, some element of the feminine, but we actually realize we can't go back. And that's really where we come to in terms of that. And it is this real tussle within us, because the inner work does change us, as you would know. It really changes us because we see the stories that we've created as stories. We often can see that we made a choice even when we didn't think we made a choice. We can see all of that stuff and we're like, okay. And there might be parts of our old self that we want to bring back, but we also go, but does that really truly align with who I am, who I want to be? And what we then also have to do is recognize our masculine identity. Obviously, again, as you say, this applies to all genders, men, where everyone goes through this. It is just about the archetypal nature of that. And we sort of see that masculine part of ourselves, you know, the logic, the control, the shaping, the, you know, that projection into the world. And often in that, and this is part of my issue with some of the feminine embodiment work, is it's like the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater and we ignore our masculine and we just do the feminine embodiment. And I've done it, you know, I've been there,
Me
done
too.
it.
I'm laughing because I have two, and it's like, go lopsided now. It's tumor, and nothing gets done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and it's awesome because everything feels amazing and I get to emote and I get to feel and I get to, but there's no shape and container. And so what we do then is we start to realize, actually, let's bring in those positive masculine aspects. Let's notice how that balance works, and we bring them together in that union and that marriage where, you know, I describe it like a riverbed. You know, if we know what floods do in Australia, it is destructive. If we are just the feminine, which is that water, we create destruction. If we have a beautiful riverbed that guides us in the direction we want to go, that gives us shape and form, then we will have times where we're raging and times where we're, you know, just flowing along, and times where we're kind of still at the side in a bank. We'll have parts where we create a riverbank. We'll have, you know, we'll wash rocks that were all jaggedy and make them smooth. Like, we need that container to allow ourselves to flow in the direction that we need to flow. And so if we think of that riverbank, that is the union. It is allowing the feminine to be there, but it's giving it shape and structure in that masculine aspect. So it really is about that marriage. Now, in terms of parenting it, I won't give you the exact, you know, issue because it was theirs to deal with. But in 2 instances in the last 2 years, my kids, well, the biggest ones I can think of that were huge, like insanely huge. And I shocked myself actually, because I just said to them, look, I'm here, tap me in. I'll do it. I'm there. I'm waiting for the tap in, but I know you guys have got this and I trust you to get through it. I am here for whatever you need, for that support, for whatever. I will get you the help I need. I will give you the tools you need. But I don't think you need any of that. I think if you tune into who you are, you've got this. And in those
I'm getting
times,
just goosebumps, and I think I just fell in love with you even more. That is the hardest thing to do for a parent. That's been coming up a lot in my sessions, of just that leaning back. And that's our own growth also reflected, that we don't need to go in and fix our children.
Yeah, it's not our job.
It's
Our
just
job is
like,
to hold
how
space.
lucky are your children to have heard that?
But, you know, they were because they're about to turn 18 Tuesday. Oh my God. And 16 next Saturday. So, you know, they were probably 14 and 6 or 16 and 14 at the time.
Yeah.
In that conversation, and whether they remember it or not, I know it's in their subconscious somewhere, they have absolutely grown and shone since then. They have seen me fight for them when I have needed to. And also most of that fighting for them has been in our private conversations. I've got, you know, you want me to hate on someone, I'll hate on someone with you. Like, you know, I've got your back, I'm in with you. And also bringing that voice of reason of going, you know, yes, that's true. And also. And so the idea, and this is what I use with a lot of my clients, is, you know, we've got to lay it all out on the table. We've got to lay out the good, the bad, the ugly, everything, and look at it all and go, yeah, all of that's true. All of that fits. And it feels conflicting at times because you've got all these different elements playing into it. But if we can acknowledge all those elements, you know, I had a client yesterday who is leaving the family business. Obviously, there's guilt. He knows that there's disappointment on the other side. There's all of this. And also, they are both knowing that this is what's best for that person.
Yeah.
Now, what's been happening is the denial of the sadness, of the guilt, of the, you know,
we do,
the
don't we?
disappointment, all of that. It's like, let's push that away and let's just look at the fact that this is what's best for me. But in that splitting and denial, you're only looking at half, not even half the picture. It's the same as clients who have lost children or whatever. It's like we have to lay all this stuff out. We have to lay it all out. And the more we can hold all of these seemingly conflicting parts as true at the same time, that's where we get our growth, and that's where other people get their growth too, because we're not denying it, we're not suppressing it, we're not, you know, if you suppress and deny things, it somatizes in your body, it gets stuck there. And then of course we develop behaviors so these bits don't get shown to the outside world. But what ends up happening, of course, is they all spew out somehow anyway. Yep. And then we actually end up being like the flood, and we create that destruction, and then we've got to do the repair action, and it's actually much harder. Whereas if we lay it all out and go, you know, okay, so why is my anger there? Well, it's there because I've had my boundaries violated, or I'm feeling afraid, or I'm not feeling loved or heard or seen or whatever. Okay. Well, that makes sense that anger's there, because that's what anger's there for. So what else is true? And so the more we can kind of bring out all of the things that are true, that bit starts to ease within our body, and we don't have that same reactive pattern, that visceral feeling in our body of, oh my God. There's more acceptance and love and kindness to ourselves and therefore to others. And that's really the way that I look at it. You know, my kids were going through some really, really big stuff, and I knew I could fix them. And this is one of the parts of the heroine's journey, which I'll just go through really quickly. It's a slightly different aspect, but I think the story just illustrates it so perfectly. Think of the story of Jesus on the cross. Now, it is a beautiful archetypal story. We all carry the cross of our own destruction on our back. We all do. We choose what stories are going to hurt us, whether consciously or subconsciously. We choose what sticks. We choose all of it in some way. Now, yes, an external event may happen that nails us to that cross, where we then suffer, etc. Somehow then we get the help we need. We get taken off the cross. We often need to go lick our wounds, hide in the cave for a little bit, and then we come out. That's actually the hero's journey, what he went through.
Yeah.
The part people do not speak about is that at the foot of the cross, watching him suffer, watching him be tortured, watching him have the crown of the thorns shoved on his head, watching him bleeding, being spat on, being jeered at, all of this was Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene, his mother and his lover. And they stood and they held space for him in his darkest time, in his biggest love. And they stood there and they just loved him through it. That is our job. And we cannot do it unless we've done our own inner work to get to that sense of peace. And that was the part of me that shocked me when my kids were going through the stuff, was because I was standing in that place. And it was breaking my heart.
That really hit a nerve. I'm getting so teary.
It broke my heart to do it in some ways, because I'm like, I need to go in and protect them. I need to.
Yeah, the cougar-ness comes out, but that is not what they need. It really is not. It is not. And like you just said, when you do that inner work yourself and you step in that full embodied feminine in supporting them, this is what we need to practice as mothers more than anything. And it is the hardest, but it is the best thing we can do for our children.
The relationship.
I'm going to share something with you. Yes. I just realized the penny has dropped for me. This is what I was doing, but didn't know that's what it was called.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the thing for me, because I actually realized in one of the archetypal life coaching things, all of a sudden she talked about it, and I'm sitting in the front of the classroom literally sobbing my heart out. Sobbing.
I get,
Because
yep.
I was in both Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary role, watching my lover and my son at the time go through really hard stuff. And I was standing in that role for both of them. And I hadn't realized that's actually what I was doing. And that my holding space was the only thing they needed. And we talk, and just to, again, to do it really briefly, it's us transitioning our role from mother the verb, where we're having to do the mothering, which we
Yeah.
do need to do when our kids are little, into being mum, into going into that noun phase. And most of the time this happens later for mothers. I like to do things early in my development, so I'm going through it fast forward, a fair few years earlier than most other mothers need to do it. But that's, again, because that's my role in the world, is to do that. It was just really interesting to stand in that place and to notice the strength that it gave them, because in me standing back, it was not, when we rush in and we try and take the nails out and pull them off the cross and all of that, we are telling them that they do not have the strength, the tools, the power to do it themselves. And we are disempowering them. Whereas in me stepping back and go, I know this is hard and I'm here for whatever you need, but I trust that you know what to do to get yourself through this. That is giving them that reassurance that they know what is best for them, that they are going to make the right decision, that they are going to be able to fully step into their power. And that is a completely different space to stand.
I cannot wait to put this out to everybody. Like, everyone needs to hear this, honestly, and practice it. Because
Yeah.
sometimes I also just do need to add that we know it or may know it, but don't always get to practice it. And, some people will go, oh, but that's easier said than done, Mary Lee. Like, you're not going through that right now. And it's like, well, I may not be going through that, but I'm going through some other stuff where I am having to practice that. And yes, sometimes we forget because that cougar mum comes in and we just want to protect our children and we just want to save them from all the pain, especially the one that we felt when we were growing up, that projection as a mother that we do. But that stepping back, it is just, and you just nailed it. You nailed it in what we're telling them when we step in. They are not good enough to do it themselves. And they don't have the capability to do it themselves. This is just beautiful and perfect. Thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure.
And I feel like we could go on for a lot longer, but we are going to wrap it up here because Amanda is just magic. She's an author as well, has written, a lot around this topic and around her own journey of being a beautiful, divine, messy human. So I will have all the links in the where do we put them? Wherever we put them on YouTube. So you can contact her. Love on her, phenomenal woman, and so much wisdom. Yeah, and I think there's a lot that people are going to take from today. Thank you so much, beautiful heart. I really appreciate you. And I have a feeling we might have you on again.
Awesome. Lots of love to you, my darling. Thank you for your light that you spread too. So needed.
Thank you. Thank you.